Welcome to the Interesting Podcast, episode number 180. This episode is with the fantastic Charissa Barton. She's a dancer, choreographer, and a super fun hang. You may recognize her work from her various short films or from the incredible Peacemaker opening sequence. In this episode, we talk about her starting with tap dancing at 3 years old, moving from Canada to New York, going to Juilliard, traveling the world with the Parsons dance company, the importance of finding your people, creating Access Connect with her sister, her choreography process, and so much more. She's a blast and you're in for a treat. So, without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the Interesting Podcast, number 180 with Charissa Barton. Theme song time.
My cabbages!
Glad when someone's busy, especially artists. I'm like, great. It makes me feel so good because you have to. It's that creative spirit. If it's not busy, then it dies. You know,
it does. You have to use it. Yeah, it's that the same concept of energy. You have to use energy to create energy.
It's all momentum.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Where in the world are you today?
Vancouver.
In
Vancouver, BC.
Ooh, is it nice? I've never been. It's on my list.
It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
really beautiful, especially right now. Things are coming back to life.
Oh yeah,
And
it's spring.
It's spring, yeah. So I'll walk daily, and every day I walk past a new tree that's suddenly in full
Sure.
bloom. Like, where did you come from? That's incredible.
Yeah.
And lots of leaves, lots of colorful leaves, just like little leaves starting to, it's great. But yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I wish I could show you what I'm looking
Sure.
at. Right now.
I'll live vicariously through you.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm in Florida.
Yeah.
We don't have seasons. It's just hot always.
I know Florida. I used to tour to Florida, and we'd spend every summer 5 weeks every summer in where was it? It was Fort. Is there a fort?
There's a few. Fort Lauderdale, maybe?
Yes,
That's a big one.
yeah, there's right. No, it's smaller. It was smaller.
Is it Fort Myers?
Fort Myers? Fort Myers is it?
I'm in Naples, which is
Oh,
like
no way.
20
Right,
minutes
that's-
south. I'm like,
Right.
you know where
close.
Fort Myers is?
I know where Fort Myers is. I remember that the bridge.
Uh-huh.
I remember having to take the bridge to swim in waters that had the phosphorescent.
Yep. Sounds about right.
And then I remember that, yeah, it being a pretty small town.
Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly not gotten bigger. There's more people in it, but it hasn't grown.
It hasn't grown,
It's-
right? It's more crowded.
Temperatures have gone up as they do. It's just
Yeah.
it's the humidity. You have to swim through the air here. It's
Right. Yeah,
I'm
I
jealous of
remember
your coolness.
Yeah,
It's
it
too
is
much.
cool. It's cool, and although it's it's rainy here.
Oh yeah,
it's-
because you're you're slightly coastal, yeah. Vancouver's on the far
yeah,
side.
it's just above Seattle, a couple of hours.
Gotcha. Does
Yeah.
it snow? Like a lot?
It does. Max 5 days.
Oh wow.
So I think this year it was like maybe 3 or 4 days.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Are you from Vancouver?
No, I'm originally from Edmonton.
Oh, sweet.
Uh-huh.
Right
You know
on.
Edmonton?
I
A lot of
do.
people know
I do.
Edmonton. Okay.
Edmonton's way more inland.
It is. Yeah.
That's
It's
I-
like Alberta. So Edmonton is in Alberta. Alberta
Mm-hmm.
is like the Texas of Canada. It's more
Gotcha.
conservative. There's lots
Okay.
of farmland. There's a big meat industry, oil industry. It's where the oil is.
Interesting. That doesn't sound like a particularly artistic place.
It is not. So it's strange that a lot of dance talent comes out of Edmonton. There's like a really strong dance scene there.
Really?
Always has been. And theater scene. So Nathan Fillion is from Edmonton, and then we have some friends who are like some of the most talented improv people that we know that are from Edmonton. Lots of really good improv artists come out of Edmonton, and some good actors too.
That's cool. So like you're in Edmonton and then you just randomly got into dance? or was it something you wanted to do? Like, how did that happen?
I grew up in a family. I have two siblings. I'm the middle of three girls.
Oh, great.
And my older sister was put into tap class when she was, I guess, 4 or 5. And I would go and watch her class and just kind of stand on the side of the room and learn tap as she was learning it. And so I was just shy of 3, and her teacher took my mom aside after class and said, "Hey, you need to put her in too. She's picking up on this stuff. She might be a natural."
Yeah.
She put me in at just shy of 3.
Wow.
And then my youngest sibling, Azure, started about a year later, and then we all continued to focus very seriously on dance from that early age through to we're all dancers and choreographers as adults. So it was a path we were a dance family. It was what we did. It was what we focused on. We were pretty competitive about it. We attended lots of competitions, and then we all took a little bit of different paths. So we actually, all of us went into ballet for a while, and I danced with a ballet company, and then I moved to New York because the ballet world wasn't for me. I learned. Moved to New York to go to Juilliard.
Oh, I've heard of it.
And then, so I continued training at Juilliard, and then from there got a job with a touring company, and then toured with that company for a while. And then I just kind of, my career's just, gone on with little breaks. Like I did step away from dance for a while, but it's like so much a part of who I am and who my family is and where I'm from, that as much as I've tried to get away from dance and I have made an effort, it always comes back. I can't escape it.
It's the feet. They're just going to go where they're going to go.
They just go where they're going to go. And there's nothing you can do about it. You just take the steps. That's it.
That's right. That's the name of your book. We figured it out. Boom. Right off the top. Take the steps.
Done.
You ever get into self-help?
Just one step after another, and before you know it, you're dancing through life. There
we go. Boom. Bumper stickers. We're figuring this out. We're already creating. Were your parents dancers? Were they like?
No. So my mom has always loved dance, and she wanted to be a dancer, but never had the opportunity to train.
Gotcha.
So I think it was something that's kind of the seed was planted in her, and then she put us, and she wasn't one of those moms that like forced us to do.
You're gonna dance.
She exactly. So, but she has a lot of respect for it, and knows dance and the dance world almost better than anyone I know. She certainly knows what's going on more than I do. And always has. And she actually worked in the dance industry herself as an administrator.
Oh, cool.
For decades. But she was never a dancer. My dad is an entertainer, not formally, but just in life. He's
the best kind.
He's a bit of a but very much an entertainer. And so we learned a lot from him about just how to be sort of free and goofy and creative. So that was sort of the structure of the family, and that environment really allowed for us to explore. And to make the choice to pursue art as a lifestyle.
That's so cool.
Career. Yeah.
And it makes all the difference in the world too, if you have supportive parents in a creative field, because then you have that,
oh my gosh,
freedom base.
It really does. It really does. It's I can't imagine, that the path of an artist is already really hard.
Yeah.
And I know that there are plenty of people that don't have or haven't had the support of their families, and it makes it a lot harder. On the other hand, I guess you can use that as fuel to succeed. And I know a lot of people have done that too. But in my case, I really the support is what I needed and had, including a mom that was like, she was a stay-at-home mom.
Cool.
And so we were her career, but she was willing to, and very much in support of getting us out of the house. Get out, please.
You gotta fly.
So getting us out of the houses as early as we wanted, really. So I was just 17, or I think turning 17 when I moved out of Edmonton to Calgary to go dance with a
Wow.
ballet company. And then I was in New York when I was 18, and she was very, very supportive of it. Just go, live life, do it. So I feel very lucky.
Wow. So tap to ballet, I feel like those are two very different things.
They are, yeah. So if you're training as a dancer, at that, I think it's evolved and I think it's changed now. But at the time and in my environment, dance environment, ballet, if you took dance seriously, ballet was crucial.
Gotcha.
Like serious ballet training. If you wanted a professional career, you need to have a solid foundation in ballet. And it was the foundation of technique for me until I got to Juilliard, and then I explored all kinds of techniques that to build upon. But in Edmonton, it was ballet was if you were taking it seriously, is what you needed to do. And I'm still a ballet fan. A lot of dance artists out there now say yes and no, and I understand their perspective. But I'm very pro ballet as a training, not as a limiting, not in any way limiting, but there's a way to use it to get better access to your own body, so that you have more freedom to do the kind of work that you want to do. The more training, the more aware you are, and the more you know, the more aware you become of what you know you can do with your body, the more you can explore and bring to the table creatively.
That makes sense. Did you pick up ballet as easily as you did tap?
No, ballet was much harder for me. Tap was easy. I have a natural sense of musicality, and I understood the concept of having control through looseness of the ankles. Like tap is one of those things that if you're stiff in your ankles, you can't make the sound changes.
Oh,
and it's much harder actually to find fast, quick rhythms and tricky rhythms in tap if you're muscling it. So you have to find looseness in your ankles, but control within the looseness of it, and control within the freedom of it. So so for some reason that was very natural to me. But ballet, ballet calls for rotation of the hips and other flexibilities. And again, though, that's changed. The perception of what is good ballet technique has changed over the last 30, 40 years. But at the time, for me, it was very much about, turnout. And so I had to force my knees. My hips are just tight. I had to stretch every single day. I had to force my body to do things that it naturally didn't want to do, and actually changed the shape of my legs and my hips and my body. You do it every day. You do it for every day for 10 or 15 years, your body will adapt. But as soon as I stopped doing ballet, my body went back to its natural form. So I struggled. So ballet was very challenging for me. But again, I knew that it was something that I needed in order to support my growth. And so I focused really, really hard on it. It became much more easily to both of my sisters. Then we did jazz. Jazz was very, very natural. It was tap and jazz around the same time. Jazz came very naturally to me as well. And I actually use a lot of jazz influence in the work that I make now. A lot of jazz.
I can see it. That's neat. You did tap, you did ballet, and then you went to Juilliard?
Yeah, so I apprenticed with a ballet company called Alberta Ballet Company for a year.
Nice.
Decided that it wasn't for me.
Important to know.
So, and for a number of reasons, and there's nothing wrong. It's a great company, really great company. It's not for me. And I wanted to live in New York. I wanted to be in New York.
Fair.
So I auditioned for Juilliard and a school called AMDA because I was considering musical theater as a path as well.
Cool.
I auditioned for both and thought, well, whichever one I get into is the path that I'll take. I'll look to them to determine which career.
Into the universe.
Yes. Then I was accepted at both, and so I had to make a decision to pursue one or the other. And ultimately, I chose Juilliard because of the director of the school at the time. His name was Benjamin Harkavy, who's known as one of the best teachers in the world, and had founded one of the best dance companies in Europe. And so I decided to go to Juilliard. Also, Juilliard just has there's a prestige to it, and
It's Juilliard.
The connections that could be made, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that I did. I had an amazing experience at Juilliard. It's usually some people don't have a great experience.
Yep.
And I felt very lucky. I had a very good one.
Was it different than you expected? Because there is the idea of what it could be and then what it is.
No, I think it was better than I could have anticipated.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, there were socially.
Sure. Sure.
It's hard training, like really hardcore. But outside, it's play hard, work hard, play hard.
Oh yeah.
And I was learning about myself at that time, and relationships and all of that stuff. That stuff was a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
Training.
That's right.
Great. I was hyper focused, and then all of the other stuff, like the college years.
Sure. It's the yin and yang of existence. You got to have it all. I get it.
Yeah. You got to balance it out.
How was New York coming from Canada? Because it's a different ecosystem.
I felt very, very at home in New York.
Cool.
From the first time that I visited, I think it was 12 or 13. And kind of knew then, like I jive with this. Like I feel this place. I feel connected to this. And so when I moved there, it felt very natural. I embraced all of it. I loved walking around. I loved exploring the city. And I had fun. We had lots and lots of fun, middle of the night going into Central Park. Actually, my now husband, Alan, I met at Juilliard.
Oh, cool.
He was in the same class in the drama division. I was in the dance division. Nice. And we were buddies. We never dated. We didn't have any kind of romantic relationship at the time. And we would have fun in the city. Like there was one night where we went into Central Park, like 2 o'clock in the morning. A bunch of us, you really couldn't do this now. This is
sure.
the early 90s. We went into Central Park and kind of split off from the group and went to the pond. And at the time it wasn't fenced off or anything.
Oh, perfect.
And we untied a canoe.
Yeah.
Found a way to row through on the pond in Central Park in the middle of the night, just the two of us, just like taking in this park. And then we were approaching a bridge and saw a big guy standing in the center of the bridge with like a long trench coat just staring at us. And then we panicked. You're like, shore. We got to shore, and then found our friends there's like a little amphitheater, and just ran around the park. And that's the kind of things that we would do that were fun. Those moments.
Sure.
That was a mess, but those were gems. And so New York for me was just this giant playground.
Yeah.
And it just felt right. I lived all over the place. I moved to all kinds of different neighborhoods within the city, and
cool.
And then left. And I always crave it still to this day. Just yesterday, I was thinking, I gotta get back there. Gotta get back. It's changed so much. New York has changed so much over the last 30 years, 10 years even. It's not quite the same as, I think it was a little rougher around the edges back
right
then.
There's definitely barricades, more laws probably.
More, yeah. There were a lot more mom and pop shops too. It hadn't been over by these corporate giants.
Sure.
So it was go to like the shoe. Well, I guess there are still shoe shops, but you go to specialty shops.
Yeah.
And record stores.
Ooh, yeah.
Great record shops. And it was a little more. There was a little more personality to Manhattan. I think it's Brooklyn now. But I love New York.
I love that. And I love those kinds of stories because they're so specific to your experience. Like you saw the guy from Home Alone. I mean, who sees that in real life?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very specific time. It was very, yeah. And living in, I mean, I think people still do this, but living in really crappy places and
Oh
and
yeah.
being totally cool with it. We rented a house in Williamsburg way before Williamsburg was hip. And it was a house that was sinking on one side. So it was tilted. So like walking through the house, you were a little tilted.
Sure.
And it was owned by, we thought it was, and this might have been something we completely made up, but I don't know, there might have been some truth to it as well.
I'll give it to you.
Like it was owned by a mob family, Italian mob family.
Yes.
And they were like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, this is the
Yeah.
So yeah, we're fine with 20 somethings taking over the house. And but yeah, we had a mouse problem, lots of mice, lots of roaches, like all of that stuff. But it made for, and we had the spiral staircase, just 3 floors of spiral, like tiny little spiral staircase that would take us up to the 3rd floor. And one of my roommates was another dancer, another one was a chef.
Oh, great.
And, yeah, and he smoked a lot of weed, that guy.
Of course.
He was a wake and baker. I never knew anyone who smoked as much weed as that guy. He was so smart. How are you so smart and smoke that much weed?
Right. He had to even out. He ascended and had to come back down.
Yeah. We had some really fun times in that place. Anyway, plenty of New York stories.
That sounds like the coolest clubhouse ever.
Oh, it was. I had really cool roommates. We were all just pursuing and doing really well in our chosen careers, and so we'd all come back with stories. I was touring the world at the time, so I'd come back with crazy stories from my touring days. My other roommate was dancing with Twyla Tharp, who, yeah, so she was with her, and so had touring with her and had stories. And then the chef would come back and tell stories about the kitchen and like crazy. Those guys, I don't know how it is now, but at the time, those chefs would do whatever they needed to do to get through the nights.
Right. Oh yeah. It's still like that in some places, especially in Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, we had fun.
That's wild. Was it the Parsons dance company you were touring with at that time?
Yeah, that was the company I was with at that time. Yeah.
I'm aware of a few things you may have done.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Parsons Dance Company. It was.
How long did you tour with them?
4 years.
Wow.
Parsons for 4 years. Yeah, and we worked most of the time. We were touring the majority of the year, and we'd come back to New York, have seasons in New York every year, and then rehearse or work new pieces or create new pieces, and then go back out onto the road. But yeah, we did.
Wow.
We toured a lot. It was, again, when you're in your 20s, touring is fun. And
sure.
I look back on it and go, wow, how did I do that? I did that. I was just like, this is just what you do, and getting to explore the world. And
sure.
And really what was nice about that company was there were 8 of us, and all the dancers were in, like 90% of the dances.
Oh, wow.
Full cast. So when we danced, when we did a show, we were in the majority, we were dancing a lot.
Yeah.
Really hard work. It was really, the work itself was really, the choreography itself was really challenging, and like super athletic and very challenging. And so after a 2-hour show, we were wrecked, but we were doing 7-8 show weeks.
Oh.
And then traveling to another city, or driving through. We did a lot of Italian tours where we would drive on. We do a lot of one-nighters. So it was like, say, a 5-week or 7-week tour.
Sure.
And station in like Milan for a week, but then hit a bunch of smaller towns and do one-nighters, which means going into the theater, staging, spacing, doing the lighting, doing a dress rehearsal, and then doing a show, and then getting on a bus and traveling to the next town. And then sleeping as much as you could, waking up, going to the theater, lighting, staging, spacing, dress rehearsal, getting on a bus. It was very, very hard. It was also incredible. Like we saw Italy, we saw all of it. And we'd get to some places where, someone from the local area would hear we were in town and insist on having us over for dinner. And there was one in particular, I remember this woman, she was in my mind at the time, very old. I don't know.
Sure. Right.
Like in my mind, she was like, this woman is in her 80s.
Right.
Might have been, but she had been a chef. She'd been a cook her whole life. From the time that she could barely walk, she was learning how to cook, and then just cooked. And she headed over to her home, which is it's like a farmhouse, and cooked a meal for the entire company, and one of the best meals to date that I have ever had in my life.
What?
Like you focus on one thing.
Sure.
Entire life, so 80 years, and at least 70. So like the focus on cooking Italian dishes, you're going to be really, really good at it. It was magic. And to be in her, her farmhouse with food that had come out of her garden and pasta that she made from hand. And it was incredible. So we'd have moments like that were just like, where else do you get to do that except the dance company for several weeks throughout Italy? Like, it's pretty neat.
Like that's what life is right there.
That's
those
life.
Little, just feeds your spirit at that point.
It really does. It is living. That is living. And then exhausting ourselves with the work, exhausting ourselves and wrecking our bodies, but living.
Yeah. That's where it's at. That's the stuff that like pays dividends later on, because just thinking about it, you're like, oh, and you get that dopamine again of like, remember that thing?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. You got to get into it. Get into it. Get into life. Get into it. Get messy.
Yeah. Actually live. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. What kind of training did you need to be able to be Robert Battle's hat?
That was, that was so, Robert Battle. It's funny. He just sent me 2 days ago, a clip of a dance that he made on me while we were touring.
Oh, cool.
That I had completely forgotten about. And I think I'm going to post it, or at least a clip of it.
You should. That's awesome.
It's a really cool dance. So that was for a photo shoot for a German magazine that was doing a feature on that company.
Cool.
The photographer had some really cool ideas. We were in a theater, and it was this incredible theater, and I don't remember. One of the other company members might remember where it was, but it was an iconic theater. I feel like it was the theater in Venice, but I might be wrong. Anyway, so this photographer came to Italy and had someone hanging off the balcony by his fingertips, and then had us lounging on this like old Italian furniture, and then one of the thoughts that he had was, what if you're like a hat and and that was really hard photo to capture, because Robert's head was right in my gut, like pressed into my stomach and my organs, my
sure. Right in the soul.
Right, like right in the like deep in the, like, get right to the root of it.
Yeah.
All my traumas that I stored deep.
Right.
Stomach
he started having your flashbacks.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it was I kind of had to hold my breath, which was not a big deal, but it was the pressure on that. So I had to look relaxed and comfortable while in actually a lot of pain. And in order to get the right shot in the right moment, it was, multiple takes, as they say, and getting up there itself was a challenge. It was it was a fun photo shoot, but it was that one was painful.
And his neck is holding a human being.
Like, his neck. He has Robert. I love Robert. He has a very big head and big hands. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
And so dancing with him was really fun, because he could just like easily just like pick me up and toss me. Toss me across the stage like it was a piece of cake. It was really it was really fun. But when we would compare, because I'm quite tiny and he's a big guy, and so we would compare hand sizes a lot. And his hand is like twice the size. Well, not twice the size, but like we might as well say it's twice the size.
If you made a fist, it's gone.
It's gone. Completely. It just doesn't exist. He was a great dancer. He is just an incredible mover. And now he runs Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater.
That's amazing. Not surprised.
Yeah, neither am I.
So you're in New York when all this is happening. When did you make the jump across to the other coast?
I believe it was I first came out to Santa Monica in 2008, I think.
Okay.
Maybe 2009. Actually, it might have been 2009. And it was because I had gotten to the point in New York, I'd lived in, it was 16 years, so whatever 16 years is. And I had gotten to the point in New York where I felt like I had done it. The specific thing that I thought at the time was, I'm getting bored here.
Sure.
And if getting bored in New York, it's time to step away for a bit.
Right.
That's not the place where you get bored.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I just needed some change.
Sure.
So, and I thought it was San Francisco. I thought San Francisco would be because it's closer, much closer to New York in terms of vibe.
Right.
And so I flew to San Francisco and just lived there for a month just to get a feel for it, and didn't connect with it. Strangely, I wasn't into it, and I think largely in hindsight that had to do with not having any friends or real connections there.
Sure.
So I drove down after a month. I drove down to LA, and at the time was thinking, no way am I going to live in LA.
Sure. New Yorker response.
Yeah, it's such a New Yorker response. But I thought, I've got a couple of friends there. I'll drive down and see them. And even when I got there, I was like, what is this place? Like, I don't even know where I am. And since driving through Santa Monica, it's like, this is just, I was on Lincoln Boulevard, which is not the boulevard that best represents LA, and especially then. And thinking, no. And then after a couple of days, I started to feel a little more connected. I probably again through friends, like it's so much, and decided, okay, maybe I'll give this a shot. And so stayed for another few weeks, and then started to feel like I can do this for a couple of years. Got a place, moved to Santa Monica. And then I bounced around a lot. I did a lot of work in Ireland for a while.
Love Ireland.
Back to New York. And then when I came back to LA for a second time, I came to Hollywood. I decided to settle closer to Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's where I am.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Mm-hmm.
And did it take, how long before you started like working and doing stuff in LA? And was that scene different from New York and stuff you've done?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
LA is a different beast.
Yeah.
It really is. It's such a different way in. Mm-hmm. So New York was very easy for me, in terms of just, again, connecting with it right away, having some rooted in some foundations there and people that I knew, and I just felt very, very connected with it. When I got to LA, it took me a long time, a couple of years to begin to get a sense of how LA works, and on a geographic level,
sure,
level, and on a personal level. It took me a long time to find my people.
Right.
I think that's not unusual. I think I think
you're right.
That experience takes at least a couple of years to really find your people. Once I found my people, then I started to feel better about being there. But it really, up until then, I went, there was one person that was worth staying for, and that was my now husband.
Oh, good pick.
So he was a good pick. So he was one of the main reasons that I really kind of pushed through and stayed. Mm-hmm. And then I started finding my people, and now I feel very good there. But it did take a while. It's so different from New York. Oh my gosh.
How long were you there doing the scene, kind of getting your feet before Question of You came to be?
Wow, you really did do your homework.
Dude, I've seen everything you've done. You have no idea. Before I even asked, I was like, I want to get to know this person.
So Question of You is actually a piece that I made at Juilliard.
Hence the retro video of you doing it.
And yes. done
Okay.
VHS style.
Uh-huh.
So when I decided I was in LA and decided I wanted to begin exploring putting dance on screen, rather than creating a new piece, it made sense to me to use some existing material and focus on the filmmaking aspect rather than both.
Right. Okay.
So that was the piece that I chose, and I staged it on Allison, and it was a really, really good learning experience. I think that was a year after I moved back the second time. So the first time I moved to LA was kind of a different story and a kind of whole separate story.
Sure.
But it was when I moved back to LA when I was in Hollywood that about a year, I started to get really antsy. I wanted to make more stuff. I wanted to do more stuff, and it was happening way too slowly for me. I expect things, having spent so much time in New York.
Right.
Just it's also who I am. I have to exercise patience and a lot of patience, and expect things to happen really fast all the time.
Yeah.
So, and that goes creatively as well. Like if something doesn't just come, I get very frustrated. So
I'm the same way.
it's a matter of just trusting process and slowing down and being cool, being patient.
Easier said than done.
That space. So things weren't happening fast enough for me. So I went, I'm just going to do this on my own then, which was not a bad. And so that was Question of You, and I learned a ton. I learned a lot about. I needed to learn mostly that I needed to learn.
Sure.
That there's a lot. You can approach it at just sort of figuring it out and guessing, or you can investigate and learn the techniques and getting clear about the why. Why am I doing this? Where does it live? And balancing all of those aspects out.
It was really good.
Thank you.
It was very cool. I liked it a lot. I did wonder though, that bar, how often does that fall over?
Oh, that was, I have a picture of Alan was there helping me. There were a few people, but he was one of the people that was just sort of there to, to help with whatever we needed at the time. And I've got a picture of him sitting. So we were getting a shot of Allison on one side of the bar doing something really tricky where she was pulling.
Yeah.
She was like leverage. And it kept pulling. It wasn't weighted enough. So there's a picture of Alan. So when we're shooting that side of the bar, Alan is crouched down, sitting on the foot of the other side of the bar just to stabilize it. And even then, it was like,
you're fighting it.
So he was really helpful on that day too. We had to do things like that. It was, and then from a dancer perspective, it just calls for a different strength. Like she couldn't rely on the bar. She had to create the illusion that the bar was more weighted than it was.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm into that. I love process. And like this piece of art, I'm like, how many people went into making this? How did this go? Like, what are rehearsals like? Like, this is a beautiful piece, and beautiful pieces don't just happen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That started back at Juilliard, and then I modified a few things to better suit Allison, and then from there, it was a pretty small crew. I think there were 6 crew, and
nice.
And my sister Charisse was there to help, and Alan was there to help, and my mom was actually in town.
Oh, cool.
Sitting on the side every now and again, giving me some input.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's gonna work. Yes, Mom. And right as usual. Okay. Yeah.
Right. That's somehow worse when they're right.
Yeah.
Like my dad's the same way. I'm like, I don't care. You're right. You're right. And it makes me more angry that you're right.
Again. Yeah.
Right. How long after Question of You did you get involved with Had She Never Asked Me? Because that was another beautiful piece.
Thank you. Yeah. That Had She Never Asked Me was something that came from, so another project that I started out of impatience.
There you go. It's working.
It's called Access Connect, that I started with my older sister Charisse. we'd been talking about it for years and decided that to create a platform for emerging and established dancers, actually.
Sure.
You can get with how the dance industry sort of functions, you can get very isolated in what it is that you're doing and lose touch with what's happening in other aspects of the industry. And because for a long time, the commercial dance world and the concert dance world and the film dance world and the theater dance world and all of these worlds were sort of isolated from each other. And what was happening at the time was all of these worlds were starting to cross over. And so dancers that typically wouldn't find themselves on or even considering Broadway were starting to audition and perform in Broadway shows. Like ballet dancers were starting to do Broadway shows, which for a long time just wasn't a thing. It didn't happen.
Cool.
And a lot of that had to do with the choreographers that had started to begin creating work for Broadway shows, and they would bring their dancers over. And so that's an example of concert dancers getting into Broadway, and then commercial dancers wanting to get into contemporary theater dance, all of that stuff. So You Think You Can Dance helped with a lot of that. All the show opened thing, just kind of helped to crack things wide open. And but a lot of dancers didn't know how to navigate all of that.
How would you?
Yeah, how would you? So Charissa and I decided, well, let's create a platform where we spend 2 weeks with dancers by audition that we bring in by audition.
Cool.
And bring in our friends from the industry, from different aspects of the industry in different areas, and have them come in and talk to them about what's happening right now. So here's what you need to know. Here's what's happening in LA. Here's what's happening in New York. Here's what's happening in Chicago. Here's what's happening in film. Here's what's happening in theater. Here's what's happening in Broadway. All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Learn in a couple of weeks, plus life skills, like
of course,
how do you take care of yourself mentally as you're, working multiple jobs in order to pay the bills while wanting to pursue a career, while also not being able to afford to live in New York and dealing with personal problems and rejection and all of that stuff. And so offering, mental support and physical support, and then the industry itself. So we were very excited about this platform, and we called the program Access Connect. And the first year we did it, it was an experiment.
Sure.
Like, let's see if it even works. Let's see if people are attracted to it. We wound up getting 80 dancers by audition.
Wow.
And we had 24 guest artists come in from the industry over 2 weeks, a week in LA. And then we brought in choreographers to create, in addition to a ton of other stuff, to create a couple of new works for the dancers that they would then perform at the end of the 2 weeks, so that they could be seen by industry people, so that they could potentially get jobs.
It's like the greatest thing ever.
It is a very cool platform. It's COVID for a couple of years. It'll come back.
Well done.
So to answer your question about how she never asked me, one of the choreographers that we brought in, I really wanted to bring in a choreographer that was creating work that it addressed social issues.
Yeah.
And this choreographer, Cindy Salgado, is a choreographer who focuses her work on, and she's an incredible dancer as well, who focuses her work on social issues.
Cool.
And so she was kind of an emerging choreographer at the time. And so we brought her in as part of Access Connect. She choreographed Had She Never Asked Me.
Oh, how cool.
I was really moved by it.
Yeah.
And then talked to her, and they performed it as part of Access Connect.
Cool.
Then I connected after Access Connect.
Heyo.
After the 2 weeks, and said, hey, I think that more people need to see this. What do you think about putting this on film?
Yeah.
Or shooting this? And she was down for it. And then we spent the next few months talking about it. And then I flew to New York, and then we shot it in New York. Again, a very small crew, because it was a passion project. It was, this is a message. This is about getting this out there. And so we created, so the piece, as you saw, it's
gorgeous.
Yeah. And it really addresses, Daniel Watts is a performer, and he's got some really powerful writing, And so Cindy took a piece that he had written and used that as the foundation for creating the dance. And so that's all how that came together. And interestingly, the written piece that accompanies the dance starts with, had she never asked me this question about the shooting in Orlando, I wouldn't have written this piece. And what's crazy about that is, or what I think is beautiful about that, is that had she never asked me, the poem wouldn't have been written. Cindy wouldn't have made a dance about it. I wouldn't have felt moved by it and helped to produce and create the film version of it, which is now out there. And so it's a little bit meta as well.
Yeah.
And there's so much truth in that. There's something really powerful about one person asking another person, hey, have you done anything with this? You seem really moved by it. You go, no, I haven't done anything. Well, why not?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. And just asking that question then creates a spark in someone to create a thing that creates more things, that brings people together, and then puts a message out into the world, or just puts a piece of art out into the world. And that's, again, life. Like that's using
That's it.
You know, it starts as simple as somebody asking a question. That's what that art.
It's magic.
It's magic.
It's that spiritual spark that we have. That's so, I can't explain it, but I like it.
I like it too. I like it. It's where it's at.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Was it your idea or Alan's idea to have a musical bit in Con Man?
That was Alan.
Okay.
Alan's idea. We wanted to have a musical bit. Yeah. And that was the first time we collaborated. And
cool. It looked like fun.
It was fun. It's funny. We just watched a little bit of Con Man last night.
Rightfully so. Holds up.
Was very stressed out. He had written, produced, directed, and starred in this series. He had, and they were doing a comic book at the time, and they were creating a game at the time. And I don't know if it was at the time. I don't think that it was. I think it was later. Maybe in the second season when he was doing Rogue One. So he was doing all of those things plus playing KTSO and Rogue. He had so much going on, but also had a ton of things going on while he was creating the first season too. He was his brain was in so many different places. And so it was our first collaboration, the first that I think he had so much going on and was so stressed out. And then it was our first collaboration, was a good sign that we make a good team. Right. Because it went really well.
Sure.
It was tight. The timeline was tight. We had very limited amount of time on the stage.
Oh.
And I had very little time to rehearse with him.
Ooh.
And he was, nervous about,
of course,
elements, and he was singing in it, and so much going on that it went as well as it did. It was a good sign for me. I do remember thinking, wow, if we work well together under these conditions, we're gonna work well together.
There you go.
Like, you don't really know until you know.
That's true. That is true. I'm fairly certain my marriage is intact because we haven't worked together. She would kill me. It would. And
then you know that.
Yeah.
Exactly. We do our professional lives very separately, and so in our case, we work really, really well creatively together.
Great. And you got to perform at a Comic-Con. Pretty cool.
And that was so cool. That was the first time that both Alan and I we started in theater. Love the stage. And I just love the stage. It's where I feel most at home. And so getting to back onto a stage and for that to be with Alan it was a really cool thing.
Had to have been a good little full circle.
Yeah, little full circle. Yeah. And it was actually, I think, the first time that we've been on a stage together.
Oh, really? How cool is that?
Yeah. Now that I think about it, yeah, I think it was, because at Juilliard, we weren't on the same stage because he was in drama and I was in dance.
You're on the same canoe. It kind of started at the canoe. We can find some parallels.
There you go. That's when the seed was planted right then.
I dig it. Now, did the collaboration success of Con Man give you the confidence to collaborate on Single Match, or was it the other way around?
That was, yeah. that also was, so that single match came from, I started taking directing classes at UCLA.
Cool.
And that was an assignment.
Oh, neat.
And it was in the very early part of the pandemic. So things were very much shut down and everyone was really, really isolated in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were restricted in what we could do. And so I had you use what's available to you.
Sure.
And we have tennis courts just down the street.
Boom.
And so I thought, well, that's okay. That's what's available. Let's work with something there. And so wrote the basic outline of the thing and then sat with Alan, and then he offered his input and elevated it in his very Alan way. And then, we spent one morning, we had one morning. I knew I wanted to get it in one morning, but we needed to get there before the tennis courts.
Smart.
And so we were up at 6, and then by 8, people started coming in. You'll see by the end of that.
Yeah.
More and more people are suddenly just there. And
sure.
It was because of that. But that was really that was our second collaboration. And it also went really well. It was fun. And it was a fun little assignment.
Yeah. That's even cooler that it was like a school assignment. That's pretty neat. How do you like directing?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. I know where my weaknesses are at this point.
It's important to know.
So yeah, and then I know I'm just at the place where I feel like I can begin sort of breaking some rules.
Cool.
Which is cool. And it's like for my process, I think it's getting really confident in my understanding of the fundamentals and the techniques.
Sure.
And then from there, opening up a little bit and experimenting. And I feel like I'm at that point now. Yeah, we watch a lot of, this word is content. We watch a lot of shows.
Sure.
A lot of stuff. And having a better understanding of filmmaking techniques and storytelling techniques has made me an even greater appreciator of good shows.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. When it's done well. And it's like, anyway, you can see that there's a reason why things work. Like it's not just
right.
magical thing that, that skill that people acquire and then just make a thing. Like there's so much technique that goes into the good work. And yes, that I can spot things now is exciting. And I think it's a natural path for me to continue with now. I think that with all of my experiences that I have had and with the different choices that I've made along the way, this makes for a natural path, a natural choice.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, especially like going from like a dancer to a choreographer. That's kind of like from an actor to a director kind of thing. I can see it. I see a correlation here.
Yeah, we'll see. At the very least, understanding directing from a storytelling and from a non-dance perspective makes me a better collaborator as a choreographer.
Oh, I bet.
And has been very helpful with everything that I do now. It just gives me a whole other toolbox that I didn't have access to before, and a language that I can now call on as needed. And so so it's, as a choreographer, it's been really, really beneficial for me to investigate all of it.
I bet. And it just makes you a better artist. You have more paintbrushes in your toolbox. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm down with that. How fun was the Peacemaker gig?
Oh my God.
Because it's so different than ballet and tap.
Yeah. And yet I drew on them. I really, there's so the lift at the end. Is,
okay.
There's a little tapping in it. You can't really, because you don't hear the tapping. At the very end, when it pulls in on Mel Tuck.
Oh, I've seen some loose ankles over there.
There's some loose ankles, tap ankles. There's some rhythm that you can't hear in there. It's
yeah, get it.
That was the tap. element, and then there's some obvious jazz influence in there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really fun and it was a really challenging project. You watch the final product,
Mm-hmm.
and on the surface, it looks quite simple.
Yeah. That's the trick though, isn't it?
It was far from simple. It was very far from simple. It was actually quite a complex process to come to that. That seems to be, I envy creators who can find simplicity right off the bat. It's just like a straight path to simplicity.
Sure.
For some reason, I have to personally move through a lot of complexity in order to arrive at simplicity.
I'm with you. Same. It's so much work.
And it's just the way that it is for me. I've thought of it for years and years and years. I've gone, how do I get to simplicity faster, easier? And maybe one day I'll get there, but for the time being, it's just my process.
Yeah,
what it is. But it's not. But I think it is in ultimate view. The simplicity is where you can find a lot of magic. But to arrive at it was involved, and my brain, once I have the kind of brain that once I give it a task, it doesn't really shut off.
Sure.
It was very much on for 7 weeks, 8 weeks. Even after we wrapped, I was still falling asleep, and my brain was problem solving and finding other ways, and finding new rhythms even within the movement and some musicality and stuff. But for at least a week after we wrapped, like it was my brain.
You were in.
Locked into it. But what's nice about that is that I don't have, like, when I'm in that zone, it's just it's there for me.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm in it, and I can trust that.
Cool.
Process.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was quite complex, and all the way from finding the right balance between difficulty of movement and simplicity of movement for not trained dancers.
Sure.
To I was hearing all kinds of variations with the musicality of some phrases and changing those a lot, while also trying to gauge, well, if I can't change it too much, because once I teach them this one, it's tricky.
Sure.
And I'm not able to flip it, but then really wanting to flip it. And to the staging itself and the transitions. And I originally staged it in the Peacemaker headquarters.
Makes sense.
And found all of the transitions in that space.
Oh.
So when we start on Peacemaker, and then the other two fold in, Adebayo and Vigilante, the transition to Harcourt and Mern, with the doors flying open, that came from transition to the other room in the back of HQ.
Oh.
Load the truck. Those doors were inspired by that space. And then the camera movement from the doors to the other side of the room came out of, how do you use a really tiny space and create movement, camera movement and energy, and all while doing the dance itself. So I had them like popping out of the back of a truck.
Cool.
And space, and then moving it around. So that was inspired by that. And etc. So as with all of the transitions that are built in there, came out of the transitions that I was working within the HQ space. So when it transferred over, all of that work had been done.
Oh, no.
But it fed it. It's one of the reasons that it works, and why there's an energy that you can't really put your finger on. And it's because all of that layering is in it, changed, modified for stage,
right,
out of necessity. But there's all of that layering can still be felt, whether you're aware of it or not as a viewer.
That's so cool. How much of that is just like when you're doing choreography for something that complex, how much of that is just like trusting your gut? Like, do you just go with it and you just feel, or like?
Yeah, the movement. So the movement all started with actually in this apartment, in a tiny little room that's a sunroom.
Ah, perfect.
And I cleared it out and set up a camera and spent a couple of hours just blasting the music and improvising. And then I went through and reviewed all of the footage and then pulled my favorites from there, pieced them together, and then took that material as, as the sort of foundation for the rest of it, took those movements into a studio with Alan.
Cool.
Because
Might
Alan
as well.
represented, well, again, a good collaborator.
Yeah.
But he also represented the actor who, without formal dance training.
Ooh, smart.
Level.
Right.
But also a very creative and funny person. So in the context of this show, was the sort of like perfect model dancer.
Yeah.
And so we went into a studio and had the first formal studio rehearsal where I taught him these moves that I had pulled from my own improv. And then working with him, found a couple cool new things and put it to counts and the music.
Smart.
And filmed the both of us doing it. And then pieced all of that together, sort of broke it down into a little video that I then sent to James with a voiceover explaining what everything was.
Cool.
And then got feedback from him. And once I got the thumbs up on, this is great, keep going in this direction. Then I was able to take that and then expand on it. And then sort of answer your question, it was about, it very, very much, the musicality is very instinctual. The transitions happen with very much time to what's happening in the music, the transitions within the music, at the end of phrasing in the music. So that also was, it's practical, but also felt intuitive. And then the rest of it was just playing.
Cool.
Playing stuff, like playing. So I had, access to H-Cube when they weren't shooting there.
Right.
And that was such a gift because I could go there whenever I wanted and just try things out and like camera and go, let me just see what this works. At one point I had a piano, use the piano where I had John playing at the piano and like 5 characters around him, like grooving to the piano. And I used the wind. There's like a little window in HQ that had someone popping up through that window. We're just trying a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And then continued to get feedback from James throughout the process. And then once we shifted it to the stage, a lot of it fell away.
Sure.
But again, I really believe that having done all of that work, plays into the final piece.
Definitely.
There's, you feel it. I think on some level.
I feel it, and I felt it before I even knew the what's in the food.
Right. So you actually taste it.
Right.
What the song is about.
That's right. Look at this. Now that you've been doing so many different things for so long, do you have any advice for like upcoming dancers or choreographers?
Yeah, I can. I talk a lot about this at Access Connect, actually.
Oh, yes.
I really believe in carving your own path. I think that there's one path for anyone. And I think a really just trust where you are. I think trust, follow your impulses. And if it means doing something that you feel is outside of the boundaries of what you've decided for yourself is the path that you need to pursue or want to pursue, don't be afraid of breaking those boundaries a little bit in order to follow what carving your own path means. Carving your life as a work of art. It's be willing to take risks. And I think I am a lifelong learner. I think learning and not being afraid to be a novice.
Oh, good one.
At a thing. So dancers train for years and years and years and years and are hyper focused on training, for 15 years a lot of the time. And so how much work it takes to get somewhere, that once you get really good at it, it is kind of painful. I guess it's painful for anyone to feel bad at a new thing.
Totally.
It never feels good. So to be willing to feel like you're not good at a thing again.
Right.
Skill.
Yeah.
I think being comfortable and being uncomfortable, being okay with being uncomfortable about being a newbie at a thing, even within dance, like even within a new style, like it gets muscle memory is really powerful. So you can get really locked into certain ways of moving, finding ways of moving that feels completely outside of what feels natural at a certain point after years and years and years, is really healthy. It's really good. So be willing to feel like a novice. And then the third piece of advice is, I think, which goes along with the learning, is do things outside of dance. Go to museums. Like if you want to stay in the world of art and the arts, that's your choice. But like at least go to museums.
Right.
Look at what other artists, listen to music that you wouldn't typically listen to. Go to tons of that. I love theater. Just go watch actors excel.
Yeah.
Explore their own craft, and they themselves are pushing their own boundaries a lot of the time, and being in that energy, I think, is helpful. And then do things like I stepped away for a year to go back to Columbia University to learn software.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was, again, that's a separate story, but I wound up learning so much about myself and my own brain and calculations, and there's so much that I got out of that process, and it challenged me. I couldn't even type on a keyboard at that point. Like I had to learn, and had just, like, I was at the peak of my dance career, and then found myself in a space where I was new at a thing that was really hard, but really, really good, because you got to stay. You have to continue to learn how you learn, because how you learn may change. At least it has for me over time. And so, like, connecting with, well, how am I learning now, and what parts of my brain am I using now, and is there some gray matter forming in this other area? Should I engage in a different way? I really believe in that. So if you're doing something that doesn't, that feels like it's not what you had dreamed of at a certain point, just trust where you are. Yeah. Trust, just keep going, just keep going, just keep doing what you're doing.
I love it.
But yeah, carve your own path, I think, is the motto.
Beautiful. I'm into it. And it's to each their own as well, because your gut knows better. It just knows. I can't explain it.
It just knows. Get out of your head. Get out of your head. Yeah, breathe.
Yeah.
A piece of advice, one of the best pieces of advice that I got, is when you feel panic or fear toward a thing, or in a moment, or in a bigger context, rather than shy away from it, step into it. Ooh. Step in, lean to your feet, like step into that anxiety, that feeling of fear. There's something to be found in there.
Yeah.
And as long as you're kind of shutting yourself out from it, and you just kind of stop breathing, in a sense, don't breathe into it, like step into it, breathe into it. Like that's when you take bigger exhales.
Yeah.
Right into it. That I loved that, because I think that there's a key in that to life, and to dealing with the challenges that we all face.
I think so too. And just like that, we've been talking for over an hour, Charissa. We did it.
Wow, time flies.
You survived. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks again for being accommodating. And
of course. You are a joy to hang out with.
Oh, thank you.
This has been a blast getting to know you, really.
Thank you.
And before I let you go, I have to ask, where can people find you online? Where can they find your stuff? Talk to me.
I am on social media. I'm on Instagram at Charissa Barton. That's CharissABarton. And on Twitter, it's Charissa Barton #1.
Get it?
There was someone else got Charissa Barton. I don't know who she is, but the Charissa Barton 1. I am not great about, like, I don't think really people use websites anymore anyway, but I do have a website. It's charissabarton.com. I'm not great at keeping it updated, but I'll continue to do my best.
There you go.
And then, I have a Vimeo page, but I need to kind of add some more stuff. And
sure. In the meantime, there is some good stuff on there, just so you know. And
My God!
Hello, friends. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Interesting Podcast. If you'd like to follow the show, it's at Pod of Interest on Twitter. If you'd like to follow me, I'm at Jedi Brian on all social media sites. You can also find me at brianballance.com. There you'll find my demos, films, and a bunch of other really fun stuff. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and tell your friends. A good rating or review always helps and is greatly appreciated. Let the people know we've got some cool stuff going on over here. Speaking of cool stuff, we now have merch. Just search The Interesting Podcast on tpublic.com to pick you up some sweet gear. Also, I've made a Patreon, so if you'd like to support the show more directly and get early releases of the shows, you now have that option over at patreon.com/JediBrian. On that note, special thanks to Daryl, Daz, Ben, Victor, Jim, and Chris. Your support means so much to me, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So until next time, be well.